What's up, everybody? Tim Anderson here, aka Renville, bearded dwarven princess to some. I've got some special guests behind me. They're in here with me today, which is why there's a sheet on the bed. Got to keep them from being monsters outside while I record some videos. Welcome back to the latest episode of Mondays in Middle Earth, a series where I continue to chew my way through The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, The Return of the King, and The Silmarillion as we march towards the Rings of Power so that I can continue to criticize, perhaps ridicule, who knows, maybe we'll even come to enjoy at some point in time the Rings of Power show that's coming out this fall. But in the meantime, we're going to continue our approach, which has been cautious, kind of awe in terms of what are you guys doing? In any case, welcome back to the latest episode. We are continuing the read through of the Fellowship of the Ring at the moment. Today's episode is going to be covering Chapter 7 and Chapter 8 of Book 2 of the Fellowship of the Ring. We are almost to the end. These two chapters are the Mirror of Galadriel and Farewell to Lórien, those two chapters in particular. We've only got two chapters left, I think, so the next episode will be the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, and then we'll be getting into the Two Towers, which it's been a long time since I've read through, but as I remember, the Two Towers is my favorite of the two books, three books. Sorry. Um, all right. In any case, before we go any further, let me say if you haven't already done so, go back and watch the previous episodes. These come out every Monday at 11 a.m. Central. There is a Discord server that we have. Links are down below. And in that server, we have a specific section that's tied to this show. So if you would like to have further conversations beyond YouTube, you can jump down in there and talk over there. And then, as always, if this is your first time here, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update. And if you like what you hear today, if you're returning or first time, don't forget you could drop a super thanks on this video, which is a new kind of recent thing, which is pretty cool. So it allows people to just donate what they want to their favorite content creators. So I'd love it if you hit that super thanks button, and you can also join our membership here. It's the Adventurers Guild. The link is down there. That's the membership here for YouTube. And you can also, if you want to go above and beyond, go to patreon.com/wandering hermits, which is that world map behind me. We'll talk about that more at the end of the episode. So let's dive in. Um, Chapter 7 is the Mirror of Galadriel. I'm reading my notes from my phone as I was reading through. This is another really good example of, in my mind, if you look at what the films did, what Peter Jackson's films did, I think the set designers in particular did an exceptional job with bringing Lothlórien to light. And when you read through the description that was in the books here of Karis Galadhon, I think they did an excellent job, just phenomenal. There's a part in the chapter where I didn't write it down in my notes, but I'm remembering it in my mind a little bit, where they're walking through and they said the city rose above them like a green cloud. It's just that just continually going up, and there's just trees all around them, and there's the city and the trees. Um, the way you get glimpses of that in the films is so well done. I think it's one of my favorite parts, and it just shows the attention to detail that I think they did, especially when they were designing real sets. When we get here, Celeborn greets Aragorn and tells him, and this is where I love this kind of stuff because we get the time marks that we don't get in the films. He says, "It's been 38 years since you were last in our realm, and those years lie heavily upon you, but the end is near for good or ill. Here, lay aside your burden for a while." This very profound statement that Celeborn is making to Aragorn here. It's like, welcome back, my son. You know, you look a little ragged, like, because he's a man. He is of the Númenórean line, but he's still a man and he's still mortal. And Celeborn is like, you know, you're looking it, but take a break, take a breather. You're safe here. His greetings to Gimli, however, is far more profound in the sense that he mentions, look, we broke our own laws to bring you in. In terms of not allowing dwarves in. And hopefully, this is a sign. This is what he tells Gimli. I hope this is a sign that the world is now, while there is dark days. My notes make no sense because I did voice to text and it didn't copyright. So the world is now darker than it was, but hopefully better days are at hand when friendships are to be renewed between the various races. So it's a very I think this is when you get to talking about the racism that some people like to attribute to Tolkien, which doesn't exist. Our own real world racism doesn't exist in Tolkien, but there very much is the racism between the elves and the dwarves because of things that happened in the past. But you can see here how bridges are being mended between the two races because of the threat of the One Ring and Sauron. We also see here how the magic of Galadriel stirs even the heart of Gimli, with her kind words about his people and their places, and the beauty of Moria before the fall of their kings beneath the stone. Um, and then he in turn replies that her land is far more fair than any of the dwarven lands, and that she herself is above all the jewels that lie beneath the earth. So we can see the power of Galadriel, the beauty of Galadriel at play here. Galadriel, and this is something that, man, you completely don't get this in the films, and I had forgotten about this because it's been so long since I read the books. Galadriel props up Celeborn here. Celeborn is the lord of Lothlórien, not Galadriel. Okay, she is definitely the lady, but Celeborn is the lord. He is, and he's the one who does all the talking here. There's only a brief moment where Galadriel speaks. Almost all the dialogue is Celeborn talking to the party members, and then Galadriel steps in for a little bit and goes away. So here Galadriel talks about how important Celeborn is in this chapter, and this is the film's completely skipped over this because as powerful as she speaks that her husband is far more powerful, the wisest of the elves in Middle Earth, and a giver of gift beyond the power of kings. Really, really cool here because Celeborn is skipped over. He has a couple lines of dialogue and that's it. But here we're very sure he is the Lord of Lothlórien. And this is another moment where the time passes differently in the films because here it doesn't specifically say how long they remain in Lothlórien, but it does say that they spent some time resting here. And the other thing that the movies don't portray here is that the Sam actually accompanies Frodo to look into the mirror of Galadriel, and he's actually the one who gets the vision of what's going on in the Shire, which is something we see in the films. But Frodo's the one who has those flashbacks, not Sam. We also get glimpses of things to come with Frodo and Sam in the future. And when Frodo looks into the mirror, he sees a figure on the road, faint and distant, growing larger and clearer until he realizes it's Gandalf, but then he sees that the figure is clothed not in gray, but in white. So it can't be Gandalf. Is it Saruman? And then after this, which this is really cool by the way, this is basically showing the passing of Gandalf the Grey to becoming Gandalf the White. After this, it says he sees many swift scenes that he knew in some way to be a part of the great history in which he had now become involved. So we're talking history and things that had to do with the ring. So lots of it just says many swift scenes that he knew to be tied to the history that he was now a part of. So he's just getting a barrage of history here. And then at the end, the Great Eye, of course, which we then saw in the films. This is where Galadriel reveals Nenya to Frodo, her ring. She talks about how if Frodo's quest is finished, the elves will be diminished, they will lose their glory and fade away, and they must then either depart into the west or dwindle away to a rustic folk of dell and cave, slowly to forget and to be forgotten. Which I think in some ways might mirror a little bit of like the way the elvish folklore of England was at the time where, as the fairies were, the rustic folk of Dell and Cave, slowly to be forgotten, There's also some more ring lore in here, where Frodo asks why he can't see into the minds of others, despite the fact that the One Ring allows Sauron to do the same. And Galadriel responds that he shouldn't try to do so because it would destroy his mind. She also mentions that he would need to grow far stronger and train his will to the domination of others in order to be able to use that aspect of the ring. But it's a really cool component that we don't ever get in the film because Frodo's curious about it. He's like, why can't I use this to manipulate other people? Why haven't I been able? What I put it on, and I go invisible. But what about these other components that, these powers that the ring has? Moving into chapter 8, the farewell to Lórien, we again have Celeborn leading the conversations, and he tells the fellowship that they have a choice to make at this point. He says those who no longer wish to continue can return to their own lands after a time in Lothlórien of resting, but that if they're going to go on, they must harden their hearts to move forward because the road ahead is hard and they won't be able to turn back once they leave. There's also a big discussion here amongst the fellowship about what they should do after Celeborn gives them the boats. which is something I had forgotten about. Most of them want to go to Minas Tirith, at least to, hang out there for a little while to deal with the enemy, and from there perhaps follow Aragorn out onto the river and into the shadows of Mordor. But Frodo can't make up his mind at this point, and we do see that Aragorn at this point had planned to go with Boromir to Minas Tirith and deliver Gondor, because this is where we get the difference of the book Aragorn from the film Aragorn. Because here we get the book version of Aragorn, which he believes basically the message in the dreams that from earlier from Rivendell is basically a summons for him. And the time has come, the hour has come at last that the heir of Elendil should come forth and strive with Sauron for the mastery. So the version of Aragorn is in the books is a lot different than the version of Aragorn in the films, because in the films he's very much a doubter. He's worried about the blood of Isildur. And it makes sense. I like the way they did it in the film. I really do. But here in the books, we're getting the sense that Aragorn he's been chomping at the bit for a long time, and he's finally senses that it's my time to come forth. It's time to duel. Let's go. Let's roll. Let's rumble, Sauron. I ain't afraid of you. Like, I got what it takes. I got the sword reforged. Let's rumble. Like, it's pretty cool. Um, we also get an inkling of Boromir beginning to change a little bit here, because he's voicing some thoughts out loud as they're debating the path south, and he gives this speech about how many lives could be saved if they would just use the ring, and what a folly it is to throw away such a valuable weapon. So it's an inkling, it's a foreshadowing of what's to come. It's a pretty long speech. It's several paragraphs. But it is just the essence of it is, hey, why are we doing this? And then it gets and he doesn't realize he'd been talking out loud, so he's kind of ruminating to himself, and then realizes, oh crap, I'm actually, sharing my thoughts with the group. We're also told something about the importance of the cloaks they're given here. How only Galadriel herself and her maidens weave these cloaks with their own hands, which is a thing that's kind of skipped over in the films. We're just kind of told, oh, they're elk cloaks, and you can, they help hide you and all this other stuff. But it's more than that. Um, excuse me. As they paddle down the river, they then meet Celeborn and Galadriel and are invited to a final feast. And at this point, Celeborn basically gives them an instruction manual on where to travel and how to travel, and places they could consider traveling, and the lands that are yet to come ahead of them, and gives them a bunch of warnings, and he has the gift of foresight, and very important here. We also get the gift giving sequence, which is much more important in the book for one reason. When Aragorn receives the Elf Stone from Galadriel, she names him Elisar, the Elf Stone of the House of Elendil. And this is where we're told that Galadriel is the grandmother of Arwen. At least I think I didn't read that incorrectly, which is pretty cool. Um, this is a moment where you realize, why Aragorn spent so much time here in his youth, because, of Arwen and everything else. But then we also realize, holy crap, Galadriel is, wait, what? Like grandmother of Arwen, and so Elrond's wife was Galadriel's daughter. Like, I don't quite understand all of the timelines here and everything else. So thoughts, comments, etc. below. Feel free to drop those, because I don't really know a lot about Arwen's mother, Elrond's wife, um, Aladdin, and Elrohir's mom. I think she was killed by orcs. Anyway, we also get a really cool explanation here, which they did a good job of in the films and the extended editions in any case. How important it is that Gimli only asked for a strand of hair and she gave him three, and it becomes a prized possession of the dwarves. It's really amazing. Um, this is also, I think, the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first moment in the in the book series when we get a poem that's entirely written in Elvish, and then there's a translation in English, which is a really cool component here. It's sort of like the end cap to this chapter, because after that, they then move on down the river, and they eventually the way the chapter ends up is it says they end up in a they end up dreary and cold along the river. So it kind of ends on a negative note, because it's kind of like they've left the beauty of Lothlórien behind, and now they're back into the wilds, and it's just cold and wet and damp, and there's nothing nice ahead of them, and it kind of makes them all a little cranky, which I think I would be cranky too if I went from Lothlórien to um, a cold, damp river. But they've got boats, so there's a couple chapters left. Of course, those of us who've read the book series before or have watched the films, we know what's yet to come. Um, some very emotional stuff is yet ahead. The end of this book is amazing. I can't wait to get to it. I'll be reading that next week if I can stay awake. I've been up since 4 a.m. and I'm recording this at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So, um, hopefully you enjoyed. Drop your comments down below. Join our Discord. Go to the section for Mondays in Middle Earth, and we can continue the conversation there if you would like to. And if you did like this video, go ahead and like it, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and I would love it if you would consider dropping a super thanks on this video as a way of saying thanks for the content that I produce and this series. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond that, you can join as a member of the Adventurers Guild. Those links are down there. And you can also go to the Patreon page for the World of the Weave and the Void. It's patreon.com/wandering hermits, and it's where my brother, my wife, and I are creating that world. It's a 5th edition tabletop setting. The books are out June 1st, 2022, the source book. There's a point and click adventure game in the same world, kind of like King's Quest. You can get the free demo now over on the Patreon page, and that game's out later this year. And then there's a book series. I am an author and publishing those in serialized format, a couple chapters per month, all on the Patreon page. And you can check that stuff out over there at the Patreons. Hopefully, we'll see you there as well, and in Discord, hopefully here as well. And until next time, everybody, stay safe, happy reading. We'll see you in the future. Cheers.